Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. It's the age of tea cozies, corsets, chimney sweeps, and afternoon promenades. You've probably seen it in costume dramas, the glowing gaslights, the grand drawing rooms, the tightly cinched waists. But what if you actually had to live in a Victorian household? Spoiler alert. It's not all petticoats and polite conversation. Before we dive in, go ahead and give this video a like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of sleepy storytelling. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see this little community forming across time zones. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum in the background, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. What it was like in a Victorian household. Imagine waking up not in the comfort of your own bed, not with the gentle hum of your phone alarm, but to the rattle of a bell pull being yanked by someone upstairs. Someone important. Someone who pays you not nearly enough. Or maybe you're the one ringing the bell. Because in a Victorian home, there's no in-between. You're either being served or doing the serving. But tonight, you're not Queen Victoria. You're not Dickens. You're not the owner of some candlelit estate where children laugh and violins play. You're just you, dropped, half asleep and unprepared, into a world of stiff etiquette, colder bedrooms, and responsibilities that make your modern 9-to-5 look like a spa day. You'll smell coal before you see daylight. You'll walk on creaky wooden floors rubbed raw by years of scrubbing. And that itchy wool nightshirt? It isn't a stylistic choice. It's the best thing you own, and it might double as your funeral clothes if the winter's bad. This isn't the glamorous Victorian England of novels and museums. This is the real household, one that stinks of chamber pots, burning tallow, and tension between classes. And whether you're upstairs or down, you're not really free. In tonight's 12-part journey, you'll wake up in a scratchy bed in a cold, candlelit room. You'll trudge through primitive hygiene routines, endure breakfast that tastes like sadness, and wrap yourself in stiff, ill-fitting clothes. You'll work through every creaking hour of the day, navigating rules so strict they'd make a modern HR department blush. You'll eat meals not for pleasure, but for survival, and go to bed beside the tick of a clock that never quite drowns out the fear that something or someone is always watching. Because in a Victorian household, the walls aren't just thin, they're judgmental. So tonight, let yourself drift, not into sleep quite yet, but into that world, into the soot, the starch, the silence, and the simmering tension beneath every polished surface. We'll explore both above stairs and below, from the grand parlors to the smoky kitchens, and from the lace-trimmed dreams of young governesses to the arthritic groans of maids scrubbing steps at dawn. This will be a long, winding journey, a little dreary, deeply uncomfortable, and surprisingly human. Just the kind of story to lull you into sleep, eventually. But first, we wake up. You wake up before the sun. Not by choice, of course. No alarms, no chirping birds, no gentle sunrise feature on a smart lamp. What wakes you is a sharp, mechanical clang. A bell yanked from the hallway by someone downstairs, or maybe someone upstairs. In a Victorian household, bells are everywhere, Not the kind you ring in celebration, but the kind that ring for you or at you. You blink into darkness, not the soft gray pre-dawn of a modern morning, but absolute black. There is no electricity, no glow of a screen, just the faintest sliver of gray leaking through the ill-fitting shutters. The fire in the hearth has long gone out, and the chill in the room is immediate, sharp, intrusive, and completely unapologetic. The bed is not soft. It's a narrow, lumpy rectangle stuffed with horsehair or straw, depending on which room of the house you've found yourself in. If you're upstairs in a master's room, maybe it's feather-filled, but that doesn't make it comfortable. Victorian feathers are sharp. They poke through the fabric, through your underclothes, and into your skin like tiny judgmental needles. If you're downstairs, you're on a pallet, possibly on the floor, with a single rough wool blanket that smells like wet stone and bitter tea. The sheets haven't been changed in weeks, and your nightshirt, if you're lucky enough to have one, is stiff in the places where it dried too slowly by last night's fading fire. There's no duvet, no pillow-top mattress. The bed frame groans when you move. Everything groans, actually. The floorboards, your joints, even the walls seem to exhale as if waking with you, cold, dry, and slightly irritated. The air smells old, not just dusty, but layered, like generations of air stacked on top of each other. Smoke, chamber pot, soot, damp plaster, floor polish, stale starch, and something faintly medicinal. Maybe camphor. Maybe death. Hard to tell this early. Your breath comes out in a puff, indoors. You're breathing clouds into your own room. The fireplace, unused. The coals dead. You could light it if you had coals to spare. You don't. Fuel is rationed. You get 1 bucket of coal a day, maybe 2 if someone upstairs forgets to count. But this early, no one's lighting fires for you. That's a luxury reserved for the drawing room, or for a house that can afford more servants. Your body aches before you even sit up, not because you're old, but because the bed is punishing. Victorian sleep isn't gentle. There's no memory foam, no orthopedic support, just tension, cold, and a mattress that remembers every person who slept on it before you, bodily. You sit up. The wooden floor is freezing. If you're in a servant's quarters, it's stone, cold enough to make your bones flinch. Your slippers, if you have them, are stiff with damp. You slide your feet in anyway. The alternative is frostbite or stepping on a live mouse. You hear voices, not conversational ones, functional ones. Murmurs from the kitchen below. Someone's already stoking the big iron stove. Someone else is clattering pans, maybe wiping down yesterday's spills with a rag that's been wet since last week. In the hallway, a whisper of skirts brushing past, the unmistakable sound of keys jingling on a chain. That'll be the housekeeper or the butler, already making their rounds, already judging everything. The bell clangs again, this time more urgent. A bedroom bell. Someone upstairs wants hot water. You haven't even stood up, and already you're late. There's no toilet in the room, not even in the house. If you're fortunate, there's a ceramic chamber pot under the bed. It's been used, probably by you, definitely by someone. There's no toilet paper, no air freshener. Just a delicate porcelain bowl and the quiet hope that no one sees you carrying it downstairs to empty it into the outdoor privy before breakfast. The water basin is on the dresser. It's chipped. The water inside is cold. Freezing. There's no hot tap. No cold tap either. The jug beside it was filled last night, left to stand and settle. Dust floats across the surface, but you scoop it up anyway. You wash your face with water so cold it feels like a punishment. No soap today. That ran out last week. You make do with a cloth. You dry your face on the same towel everyone else uses. It smells vaguely of vinegar and disappointment. There's a mirror, small, scratched, fogged. You catch a glimpse of yourself, and for a second, you think maybe you've aged 10 years. But it's just the light, or lack of it. Victorian mornings don't believe in flattery. There's no backlit bathroom selfie to ease you in. Just your tired face, half shadowed, half frozen, looking back at you like, what now? The first footsteps thump overhead. Heavy, sharp. That'll be the master, or the mistress. The house is awake. That means you need to be faster. Downstairs, the maid of all work is already shoveling ash from last night's fire. She's 14, maybe 13. Her hands are black, her apron gray, her face unreadable. You'll pass her on the way down. She won't look at you. She hasn't been taught to look. A knock on your door, not a polite one. A quick rap, sharp and dry. Up, says a voice. They're asking. And just like that, the day begins. Not with coffee, not with silence, not with any kind of grace, but with coal dust in your nostrils, laces undone, fingers stiff, and a sense that something very large and very invisible is watching you work. Because in a Victorian household, the rules are already written, and no one's waiting for you to catch up. Downstairs, the kitchen is already hot. Not warm, hot. The big iron range at the heart of the room burns day and night, and the air around it is a permanent stew of coal smoke, frying fat and damp wool. Every surface is coated in a soft haze of soot and flour dust. You breathe it in without thinking. Everyone does. It's just how the air lives down here. A pan hisses. Somewhere a kettle groans. Someone opens the oven and mutters something about underdone scones. You shuffle forward in stiff wool socks and pray the next few moments contain something edible, warm, and not still twitching. If you're a servant, and tonight you are, breakfast comes before sunrise and without ceremony. You eat standing up, or if you're very lucky, sitting on a stool with one leg shorter than the others. No time for napkins, no conversation. You eat like you're trying to prove you don't need food at all. The first meal of the day is functional. It's usually a crust of yesterday's bread, tough, dry, and somewhere between stale and a fossil. You dunk it into weak tea or into the drippings left in the bottom of a pan, depending on whether the cook's in a generous mood or a spiteful one. Butter? Not a chance. Maybe dripping, if the roast from last night was fatty enough. It looks like congealed regret. You scrape it on with a dull knife and pretend not to notice the gray bits. There might be porridge, thick, lukewarm, and the color of boredom. No sugar, no honey, just oats, boiled into a texture that can only be described as internal. You chew it out of obligation, not pleasure. It clings to the spoon like it resents being disturbed. Some days there's a boiled potato instead, or in bad weeks just onion and salt, and that's if you're eating at all. The tea is hot, barely. Weak, always. The leaves were reused from yesterday, possibly the day before that. It's brownish water with dreams of being comforting, and you drink it because your bones demand heat in any form. Milk? Maybe. But it's unpasteurized and closer to room temperature than safety. You sip it and pretend the tang is intentional. You don't speak. Talking during breakfast is frowned upon, especially by the housekeeper, whose eyes can detect insolence from behind the pantry door. The older servants eat quickly and silently, eyes down, teeth worn smooth from decades of grinding bread crusts. You follow their lead, because the last thing you want right now is to stand out. Across the room, the scullery maid is washing dishes from last night's supper. She's 13, maybe 12. Her hands are already raw, cracked, and red from scouring with ash and lye soap. The sink is just a deep tin basin on a wooden counter, and the water is cold. There is no plumbing. The water was hauled up from the yard pump before dawn in heavy iron buckets. 2 trips if you're strong, 3 if you're not. She didn't complain. She just coughed quietly and got to work. You'll wash soon, too. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Victorian hygiene isn't about feeling fresh. It's about appearing clean enough not to be judged. There's no bathroom, no sink, no running water. Hygiene happens in pieces, fragments of cleanliness snatched between duties. You walk down the narrow back corridor to the washing stand. It's a wooden frame with a chipped porcelain basin, a cracked mirror, and a damp rag that's seen better decades. You splash your face with water that's either too cold or too tepid. It smells faintly metallic, like the pump handle outside. There's a bar of soap, harsh, lye-based, and gritty. It smells like old lemon and punishment. It scours more than it cleans, but you rub it across your face, your neck, behind your ears. It burns a little. That means it's working. Probably. There's no toothbrush. Not really. If you're very lucky, you might have a rag and a bit of bicarbonate soda or some salt to rub on your teeth. More often, you just chew on a stick, a frayed piece of birch or mint wood, to scrape away whatever breakfast didn't already dislodge. Mouthwash is a myth. Bad breath is universal. Everyone smells faintly like old onions and regret. Hair is another battle. If you're a woman, it's pinned, coiled, braided, and always up. Always. Letting your hair down before dark is seen as lazy, or worse, scandalous. Your hairbrush is made of boar bristle and wood. It pulls, it rips. It never actually removes all the soot or kitchen grease, but it feels like it should, so you keep brushing. 5 strokes, 10, 20, until your scalp tingles or bleeds. If you're a man, your hair is combed with water. That's it. No gel, no conditioner, no parting tool. Just a comb and a prayer to avoid lice, which are everywhere. You check your cap. You scratch once, twice. You don't ask questions. Lice are like taxes in a Victorian house, unavoidable and always looking for a host. Bathing, real bathing, doesn't happen in the morning. Not daily, not weekly, in most cases. The household might offer a bath once a fortnight. If you're a servant, once a month. A tin tub dragged into the kitchen, water hauled in buckets, heated slowly on the stove, and reused. You bathe in order of status, which means if you're last, you're sitting in water that's already hosted 3 other people and a variety of mysterious floating particles. Women wash carefully, strategically, and silently. They focus on the important parts, not because they don't want to bathe, but because society doesn't allow time, privacy, or warm water. Baths are considered risky, overindulgent, unnecessary. Getting fully wet? Dangerous. Catching a chill from a warm bath was an actual medical concern, and doctors, well, we'll get to them later. Perfume, cologne, and powders do the rest. Lavender oil, rose water, talcum, or just vinegar rubbed under the arms and behind the neck. Victorian hygiene is more disguised than detox. It's about masking odor, not removing it. It's about appearing clean, not being comfortable. You rejoin the kitchen. Breakfast is over. The dishes are being cleared. You hand over your tin plate and wipe your hands on the same towel as everyone else. And yes, it smells like last night's soup. Upstairs, the bell rings again. Louder. The household is stirring. The real day is beginning. The kitchen is filling with tension, smoke, and expectation. Tea trays need preparing. Breakfasts need assembling. Uniforms must be ironed. Boots must be polished. Fires must be lit. And you're already 5 minutes behind. You glance at your fingernails. Still dirt under them. No time. Someone else will notice. Someone else always notices. Because in a Victorian household, cleanliness isn't just next to godliness, it's survival. You don't choose your clothes in a Victorian household. You don't get to browse a closet or check the weather app. You wear what's prescribed, by class, by duty, by someone who probably isn't doing the laundry. If you're a servant, your uniform is already laid out, folded neatly on a chair, stiff with starch and expectation. The dress is thick wool or rough cotton, dyed in dull shades of navy, brown, or black. No colors, no lace, no softness, just practicality, or rather, the illusion of it. The fabric itches. Always. Wool pressed against your skin like a punishment. If it's summer, you sweat. If it's winter, you freeze. There's no such thing as seasonal attire, just layers. Undergarments, shifts, corsets, petticoats, bodices, aprons, and sleeves that somehow both constrict and sag at the same time. You pull each piece on like armor, not to protect your body, but to erase it. And yes, corsets. Every morning, even if you're scrubbing steps by noon, even if you're 12, even if you're 60. The stays dig into your ribs, push your spine upright, and compress your lungs just enough to make breathing a thoughtful act. Corsets are not fashion here. They're control. Every rib bound is a reminder of where you belong. Shoes are another form of cruelty. Leather, if you're lucky. Cracked, misshapen, heavy. Soles worn thin from years of hard floors. Laces frayed. And no comfort. No support. Just noise. Every step you take clicks, thumps, or creaks, because silence, too, is a luxury in short supply. Your apron is clean, barely. Your cap, white, tight, and perched just so, isn't optional. A woman without her cap is a woman inviting comment. A servant without her cap is lazy, No exceptions. Hair must be pinned, hidden, controlled. Your body, like your words, must be neatly tucked in. Now, if you're upstairs, if you've been dropped into the household as a member of the family, you still don't dress yourself. That's what the maid is for. She brings your underclothes warmed by the fire. Or if she's forgotten, chilled like grave linen. She laces your corset while you hold the bedpost. She buttons the back of your dress. Victorian fashion has no concern for your autonomy. It assumes a second pair of hands. It was designed by people who never had to wear it. Your dress is beautiful, yes, but also heavy. Floor-length skirts layered with petticoats, bustles, maybe even a crinoline cage. Thin metal loops designed to create a fashionable silhouette while ensuring you can't sit comfortably, move easily, or pass through a doorway without knocking over a vase. The fabrics are rich but impractical. Silk that snags, velvet that absorbs smoke, lace that tears when you breathe too hard. Shoes are dainty but useless, slippers with soles like cardboard. Fashion, in the Victorian world, is often a kind of agreed-upon struggle. But no matter who you are, maid or mistress, footman or lord, you are trapped in your clothing. There's no softness, no sweatpants, no throwing something on. Dressing is a ritual, one that takes time, assistance, and absolute adherence to social rules that shift depending on the hour of day. What you wear says everything, and more importantly, what you're not allowed to wear says even more. And then there's shelter. Victorian homes are either showcases or prisons, depending on where you fall on the social ladder. If you're upstairs, the rooms are elegant, on the surface. Parlors, drawing rooms, libraries, velvet drapes, oil paintings, heavy curtains. The furniture is carved, polished, and utterly uncomfortable. Chairs are made for posture, not rest. Sofas are narrow. Tables are decorative. And everything smells faintly of beeswax, coal smoke, and boiled cabbage. The light comes from gas lamps or candles, yellow and flickering. Shadows rule the corners of every room, and the air never feels quite clean. The carpets are thick, but so is the dust. People track in mud. Dogs shed. Coal smuts everything. There's no vacuum, just brooms and blind optimism. The walls are decorated in deep greens, maroons, or browns, colors chosen not for cheer, but for gravitas. Victorian interiors are designed to impress, not relax. Comfort, as a concept, is reserved for the afterlife. You might have a fireplace. You might even have two, but they don't warm the whole room. Only the chair closest. The rest of the room stays cool, damp even. The corners breathe with mildew and old smoke. And every few hours, someone must poke the coals, sweep the hearth, and reset the grate. Now, if you're a servant, forget all that. You live in the attic, or the cellar. Maybe even a broom closet repurposed into a bedroom, with a cot and a crucifix nailed to the wall. The ceiling is low. The floor is bare. The walls are cracked, sometimes wet. There are rats, always. You don't see them, not during the day, but you hear them at night. Scratching, rustling. One darted under your bed last week and hasn't come out. You gave it a name, something biblical. You're too tired to be afraid. Your bed is narrow, sagging, full of straw or lumpy feathers. The blanket is thin. You share it with the chill. In winter, you sleep in your clothes. In summer, you sweat through them. The window barely opens. Sometimes it's just a hole with a shutter, and rain slips through the cracks. You learned long ago to keep your shoes off the floor. There's a single chair and a hook on the wall for your one other dress. Your comb sits in a chipped cup beside the candle stub you ration carefully each night. Light is expensive. You make do with dusk. The walls are thin. You hear everything. Footsteps above, voices below, someone snoring through the wall. The plumbing rattles, pipes clank, bells ring at all hours. There is no such thing as silence in a Victorian household. Even the floorboards groan like they're haunted. And maybe they are. There's no privacy, not in the physical sense and certainly not in the emotional one. Even thoughts feel too loud. You whisper prayers into your blanket. You cough quietly. You cry into your pillow, but not often. Tears are considered indulgent. Better to save your energy for sweeping. Shelter, here, is not safety. It's structure. It's expectations. It's walls wrapped around rules, wrapped around people who may or may not remember your name. If you're lucky, you stay dry. If you're very lucky, you're not noticed. And if you're not lucky at all, you're replaced. In a Victorian household, you're always replaceable, no matter how many buttons you sew, or fires you light, or corsets you tighten. The house will outlive you. So will the clothes. So tonight, as you pull your apron tighter or your bodice higher, just remember, the walls are watching, and the house is never empty. It's still not yet 7 a.m., and already you're late. The day in a Victorian household begins long before the city stirs, long before the sun dares show its face, before the chimney sweeps are on the rooftops, before the milk is delivered, before the street urchins warm their hands on the baker's outer wall. And in this world, it begins with work. Not labor in the modern sense. Not logging in from your kitchen desk, coffee in hand. This is Victorian labor. Endless, physical, and entirely indifferent to your feelings. If you're downstairs, your first task is lighting fires. There are over a dozen fireplaces in a proper household. One in each bedroom, one in each drawing room, the library, the study, the breakfast room, even the lavatory, if the family is particularly fond of warm bottoms. Each fire must be cleaned, the ashes shoveled out into soot-black buckets, the grate cleared, the coal replaced, the kindling arranged, the flames coaxed, not sparked. There's no matchbox waiting politely, just flint, steel, and fingers too numb to feel the difference between ignition and injury. You do this all in near silence, because the household must never hear you work. The floors must be swept, the carpets beaten, the silver polished until you can see your exhausted face in the teaspoons. Boots must be cleaned, not wiped, scoured, with brushes and blacking, elbow grease and scoldings. If you miss a spot, it's not the boot that's scuffed, it's your reputation. And then there's water. Water must be fetched, pumped, carried, hauled up 3 flights of stairs for every bedroom jug and poured into basins by hand. Cold water, always cold, unless someone upstairs wants it hot. in which case it must be boiled in massive copper kettles on the kitchen range and carried with trembling hands, praying you don't spill it on the carpet. Break one jug and it's taken from your wages. Spill water on the polished stair rail? That's a lecture. Possibly a dismissal. Possibly worse, depending on the mood of the mistress. By 8 a.m., your back is already aching. You've done more work in 2 hours than most people do in 2 days. And still, breakfast hasn't even been served. If you're in the scullery, you're elbow deep in the basin already, washing last night's supper plates with soap made from tallow and lye. The water burns your cracked skin. The knives are slippery. You cut yourself and don't even flinch. There's no time. The dishes never end. Above stairs, it's quieter, but no freer. If you're a lady of the house, your morning is full of its own kind of labor, the social kind, the invisible kind. You must oversee the household accounts, review the menus, inspect the linens, approve or reject the flowers for the drawing room. You sign your name with the grace of a swan, but the pen feels like iron. Your time isn't yours. You're expected to write letters, pay calls, host guests, always pleasant, always well-dressed, always available. You are not permitted to be tired, or bored, or sad. Just efficient, elegant, and quietly powerful in a house that was never really built for you. And then there's the sewing. Oh, the sewing. The average Victorian household runs on a mountain of fabric. Curtains, uniforms, dresses, collars, pillowcases, tablecloths, trousers, caps, chemises, waistcoats, underthings, overthings, and more. If you're a servant, you sew until your fingers bleed. If you're the lady of the house, you supervise the sewing room, where underpaid women stitch delicate lace under oil lamps for 16 hours a day, coughing from the fumes of the dye and the dust from the wool. Seamstresses sit hunched, eyes straining, needles flashing. They are invisible, disposable. Their pay is counted in shillings, their lives in stitches. You may never know their names, but you wear their work on your back. The kitchen is a war zone. The cook reigns supreme here. Large, red-faced, apron tied tight, temper shorter than the matches she lights each morning. Her world is knives and boiling pots, roasting joints and suet puddings, egg timers and raw terror. Servants scurry in and out, bringing supplies from the larder, which is cold and smells of onions and mildew. The pantry holds root vegetables in varying states of decay. Bread must be sliced, cheese cut, meat examined for spoilage. If it's turned, it's scraped, boiled, and disguised with herbs. Nothing is wasted, ever. And still, the work continues. Laundry day is its own nightmare. Boiling water, lye soap, washboards, broken backs. You stir sheets in vats the size of coffins with wooden paddles, steam curling around your face like judgment. Then it must be wrung by hand, twisted and pressed, then carried, dripping, out to the line. Rain ruins everything. So does soot. So does pigeons. So do guests arriving early. And if you're a child in this household, well, you don't get to be a child. If you're upstairs, you're being drilled in posture, French verbs, and arithmetic by a governess who hasn't smiled since the Crimean War. You practice embroidery until your fingers cramp. You curtsy until your knees tremble. You must not slouch, or sigh, or speak out of turn. If you're downstairs, you're scrubbing stair treads with a rag the size of a handkerchief. You're hauling buckets, emptying chamber pots, running notes through the city streets until your shoes fall apart. You're 11 years old, but your eyes are 50. And what if you're sick? Too bad. Illness doesn't exempt you. Unless you're coughing blood or unconscious, you work. Fever, wear a shawl. Headache? Drink tea. Broken toe? Hobble faster. No one covers for you. No one can. The work waits for no one. And if you're gone too long, you're replaced. Even the gentry aren't safe. The pressure to maintain the illusion of wealth is a full-time job. Tea must be served. China cups held just so. Social calls must be made at exactly the right times. Dresses must be fashionable. Manners flawless. Appearances maintained. Everyone is working, all the time. Even the leisure is structured. Even the silence is earned. And when the day finally begins to dim, and the fires burn lower, and the boots have all been blacked, and the meat pies have all been served, there's no relief, just the next task, the next bell, the next scrape of a chair or a shout from above. You don't rest, you pause, because rest is a luxury. And in a Victorian household, luxury does not trickle down. By now, your hands are raw, your feet ache. You've served breakfast, polished silver, avoided 3 different reprimands, and refilled the coal scuttle twice. You've moved through the house like a ghost in sensible shoes, and still, you haven't escaped the most powerful presence in this household. God. And not just any version of God, but the Victorian one. Strict, silent, and almost always watching. The religion of this era is not soft. It doesn't comfort. It corrects. It punishes. It keeps you in your place. Whether you're a noble or a maid, religion is as much a part of the household as the wallpaper or the dust in the corners. You begin each Sunday with church. There's no sleeping in, no just this once. Even if your lungs are weak, even if your shoes have holes, even if the baby was screaming all night, you go and you go in silence. Morning service, afternoon service, evening sermon. If you're a servant, you may not attend with the family. You have your own pew, or more likely, you sit in the back behind a wooden partition. The church is cold. The seats are hard. The minister speaks of sin with the gravity of a man who's never once smiled. He doesn't preach love. He preaches duty, obedience, repentance. Hell. Hell is always close in the Victorian imagination. It isn't a vague concept, but a real and present danger. Fiery, vivid, detailed in every sermon, every Sunday school story, every cautionary tale. A misstep could damn your soul. A thought could mark you. A pleasure, even a small one. A second cup of tea, a moment's vanity in the mirror, could inch you closer to eternal fire. Upstairs or down, you feel it. In the nursery, the children memorize scripture alongside their spelling. They are taught to be seen, not heard, to fear God more than anything, and definitely more than the governess. Their storybooks are full of pious orphans reformed drunkards, and Victorian deathbed conversions, where tears cleanse sins and everyone dies just in time to be saved. In the kitchen, the cook keeps a Bible tucked beside the tin of baking soda. She reads it every morning, lips moving in prayer while the porridge boils. Not for comfort, though maybe a little, but mostly to stay right, to keep her soul clean in a world full of stains. You hear grace before every meal, mumbled by rote, almost bored, but never skipped. Bread is broken under the gaze of the Almighty. Even crumbs feel watched. But religion here isn't just doctrine. It's folklore, superstition, ritual. You don't whistle indoors. It invites the devil. You don't place new shoes on a table. That's death. Mirrors are covered when someone dies. Windows are opened to let the soul escape. Salt spilled is salt cursed, so throw it over your shoulder. Right one. Always the right. The housekeeper touches her cross every time she passes the cellar. She won't say why. No one asks. That corner's always colder. That beam always creaks. Just don't go down after dark. And the baby's cradle? There's a charm pinned to it. A tiny red ribbon and a silver thimble stitched under the mattress. Against the evil eye. Against fevers. Against whatever invisible thing keeps sniffing around after midnight. The doctor is called for illness, but for prevention, there's the herbalist. The kitchen maid sneaks a bit of dried lavender into the master's tea to keep away melancholy. The footman swears by a pouch of dried wormwood in his pocket. It keeps the spirits away. No one argues. You need something to explain the knocking in the attic when there's no one there. Death hovers always, like a relative no one invited but everyone fears. Children die suddenly. Coughs turn fatal. Women vanish into childbirth, bloodied and silent. There are rules for mourning. Black crepe, veils, gloves, silence. You don't just wear grief, you follow it. For 12 months after a death, no color, no dancing, no laughter. Sometimes no mirrors, no music, no photographs unless you pose the corpse and pretend he's sleeping. Yes, that's a thing. Post-mortem photography. You sit your dead loved one in a chair, tie their chin up with string, and capture their likeness while they're still presentable. Because death is part of the household. It doesn't wait outside. The family Bible holds more than scripture. It's a logbook of births, deaths, marriages, triumph and tragedy recorded in the same margin. And if you're a servant, you follow the rules, or pretend to. You bow your head when the master prays. You memorize the same hymns, but you may still keep a lucky coin in your apron pocket, or whisper the old names when no one's listening. Names from before the church arrived. Folk saints, green spirits, hearth protectors. You wouldn't admit it, but you believe. Because how else do you explain the sickness that took the stable boy in one night? How else do you explain the cry from the locked nursery, or the candle that blew itself out on the day the baby died? You cross yourself. You light a taper. You mutter the Lord's Prayer in one breath and an old rhyme in the next, just in case. Faith in this house is not gentle. It's not soft or warm. It's a framework, a leash, a warning. It's built into the architecture, visible in the stone crosses above the door, the Bibles on the parlor tables, the crucifix in every hallway. It watches you, it judges you, and it follows you long after you leave the church. But belief here is more than fear. Sometimes it's hope. Hope that your suffering means something, that your labor has purpose, that the bad days are trials and the good days are blessings. Hope that if you light the candle, say the prayer, avoid the black cat, salt the windowsill, and keep your hands clean, maybe, just maybe, you'll be spared, or remembered, or forgiven. Because in a Victorian household, belief isn't just part of life. It is life. And sometimes it's all you have. You hear the sound before you see it. Clink, clatter. The unmistakable rhythm of cutlery being laid out by someone who knows better than to leave a fork crooked. It's time for another meal. But in a Victorian household, meals aren't just meals. They're performances. Structured, symbolic, and highly stratified performances, where what you eat, how you eat it, and who you eat it near all mean more than the food itself. If you're upstairs, it begins with the table, laid hours in advance, silver polished, plates stacked precisely, glasses aligned like soldiers. Every fork, spoon, and knife has its place, and heaven help you if you pick up the wrong one. The napkins are folded into stiff little fans or triangles. The salt cellars are topped off. The bread is arranged in a basket lined with lace. A jug of cream sits in the exact center of the table, even though no one will touch it until the third course. The room smells like beeswax and roast meat. Not freshly roasted, more like the ghost of it, lingering under the scent of boiled cabbage, gaslight, and upholstery. Heavy curtains trap the smells. Every meal leaves its memory behind. You take your seat not when you're hungry, but when the footman opens the door and announces, "Dinner is served." And you don't just eat, you perform. Napkin in lap, elbows off the table, knife in the right hand, fork in the left. And God forbid you switch them. Chew quietly. Don't slurp. Don't burp. Don't speak with your mouth full, though, or empty if you're of the quieter sort. Conversation is mandatory. Silence is awkward. So you discuss weather, letters, travel, the latest scandal, but never money, health, or politics, unless you're prepared to duel someone in the drawing room afterward. Now, the food. It looks grand. It smells acceptable. It tastes like obligation. Roast mutton, boiled potatoes, cauliflower in white sauce so thick it could mortar a wall, overcooked greens, undersalted soup. Nothing spicy, nothing bold. Seasoning is suspicion. Simplicity is virtue. The meat is always overdone. To ensure safety, they say. But really, it's because everyone's terrified of parasites, and for good reason. Milk might be fresh, or it might be raw and slightly fizzy. Bread could be wholesome, or it could be bulked out with chalk and alum by a less than honest baker. Vegetables are available, but not particularly trusted. The belief still lingers that fresh produce causes indigestion, or worse, a cucumber could kill a man if served too cold. Dessert, however, is the great social equalizer. Puddings, pies, jellies molded into shapes so elaborate, they wobble like chandeliers in a minor earthquake. Spotted dick, treacle tart, roly-poly. The names are unfortunate. The flavors, marginally better. If you're lucky, there's a syllabub, a mix of cream, sugar, and wine whipped into a foam so light it practically apologizes for existing. You scoop it up with a tiny spoon and pretend it's delightful. After dinner, the men retire to the study for cigars and brandy. The women retreat to the drawing room for needlework, piano, or a thinly veiled social duel beneath the polite murmur of compliments. Now, if you're downstairs, the meal looks very different. You eat standing up, perched on stools, or hunched over a corner table. It's loud, cramped, hot. You eat quickly because the bell could ring at any moment. And when it does, everything stops. Your plate is tin or enamel. Your utensils don't match. The food is whatever was left over, or whatever was deemed not quite good enough to send upstairs, usually bread, sometimes cold meat, often gristle, porridge, beans, salted fish so chewy it gives your jaw something to think about for hours. Tea, always tea, weak and gray with reused leaves. You eat with one hand and keep the other clean, just in case you're summoned, and no one lingers. Meals are not breaks, they are pit stops. You fuel up and go. Now, entertainment. The Victorians loved entertainment, provided it followed the rules. Evenings in a well-off household were reserved for carefully orchestrated leisure. There might be readings by the fire, someone leafing stiffly through a volume of Tennyson while everyone else pretends not to fall asleep. Or parlor games, charades. The minister's cat. Card games like whist or loo, played with such solemnity you'd think national borders were at stake. If someone owns a piano, and most respectable homes do, music fills the room, usually played by the daughters. Not for joy, but for display. A girl who plays well is cultured. A girl who plays too well is suspect. Dancing is reserved for larger gatherings, and always follows etiquette manuals that detail where to place your feet, your hand, your eyes, and your expectations. At a proper dinner party, conversation must never falter, and the entertainment must always include a bit of everything: a poem, a song, a short moral story, a tray of peppermint creams, and possibly a minor scandal involving someone else's cousin. The lights are gas or candle, soft, golden, but they throw shadows, and the room always feels a little too warm, a little too quiet, a little too full of things no one's allowed to say. And the servants? They entertain themselves when they can. A quiet laugh in the scullery, a game of cards in the back kitchen when the master's away, a stolen dance in the courtyard, a smuggled dram of gin. They whisper gossip. They hum. They share scraps of stories and songs too coarse for upstairs ears. Entertainment for them is survival, a reminder they're still human after 16 hours of being treated like furniture that can move. And when there's a holiday, a rare one, the household breathes differently. Christmas brings feasts, yes, but also double the labor. Roast goose, plum pudding, mince pies, holly on the mantel, candles in the window, and so many guests you forget who lives there and who just wandered in for brandy. Servants get a bit of figgy pudding if the cook's generous, maybe a penny or two from the master. And a few hours off, just enough to remember what life feels like when you're not holding a tray. But even then, you're working, just more quietly, with a bit more tinsel. Because in a Victorian household, food is status, entertainment is ritual, and everything is for show. No matter where you sit, it starts with a cough, not a loud one, just a quiet tickle in the back of the throat, a whisper of discomfort during the night. You roll over, try to ignore it. But in a Victorian household, a cough is never just a cough. By morning, the maid is pale. She's sweating. Her fingers shake as she lights the fire in the drawing room. No one says it, but everyone hears it. Consumption. That was the word they used then. Consumption. Like the body was being slowly devoured from within. Romantic, almost. Until you realize what it actually means. Tuberculosis. A death sentence that comes not with a scream, but a slow, rattling breath over weeks, maybe months. And that's just one illness. The Victorian household is a petri dish of danger. Germ theory is barely emerging. Hygiene is primitive. Plumbing, if it exists, is crude and often worse than nothing. People wash hands irregularly. Doctors still wear their street clothes into surgeries. Water isn't filtered. Milk isn't pasteurized. Flies buzz freely in the pantry. And so people get sick. Often, badly, quietly. Scarlet fever, typhoid, whooping cough. Cholera, if the drains are particularly vile that season. Measles, smallpox, dysentery. Influenza that kills not the elderly, but the healthiest. A tooth abscess can take your life. A broken bone can lead to sepsis. A splinter in the wrong place can turn gangrenous. And when sickness comes, it spreads. There's no quarantine. Not really. Just the gentle closing of a door and the quiet hope that no one else breathes too deeply near it. You're told to stay in bed, to drink broth, to be still. But the bed is cold. The broth is thin, and stillness only makes the fear louder. Doctors are called, eventually. If you're rich, he arrives in a black coat and a tall hat, smelling of tobacco and boot polish. He carries a leather bag full of mysteries and metal. He checks your pulse with the same fingers he used to pay the cab driver. He listens to your lungs, but there's not much to say. If you're poor, there may be no doctor. Just a local woman with herbs, a midwife with more instinct than training. Or nothing. Just a wet cloth and a whispered prayer. The treatments? Let's just say, you'd rather not. Leeches, if they think your blood is stagnant. Bloodletting, if they think there's too much of it. Laudanum, a syrupy mix of opium and alcohol, for pain. Mercury for syphilis, arsenic for skin, castor oil for everything. You might be cupped, burned, purged, wrapped in vinegar-soaked cloths and left to shiver through the fever. You might be bled into unconsciousness, or dosed until you don't remember what pain feels like, or who you are. There's a fine line between medicine and poison. Victorian doctors walk it barefoot, blindfolded, and overconfident. And still, people trust them. Because what else is there? When the baby cries too weakly, they call the doctor. When the mistress faints, they fetch smelling salts. When the master coughs blood into his handkerchief, they press him gently back into his chair and pretend they didn't see it. Because death is a regular caller here. It doesn't knock, it enters. Infant mortality is common. You can lose 3 children before breakfast and still be expected to host tea at 4. Funerals happen at home, in the parlor. The body is dressed, posed, visited. The mourning drapes are hung. The mirrors are covered. The clocks are stopped. Time halts. But only for a day or two. The rules of grief are strict. A widow wears black for 2 years, a parent for 1, a sibling for 6 months. The servants, if the death is in the family, may wear a black armband, but only until the next holiday. Grief is controlled, managed, whispered about. Too much is seen as hysteria, too little, disrespect. Death is always close but never spoken of in plain terms. People pass. They go to their rest, and they are called home. You rarely say the word. It feels too final, too heavy, and yet you live with it. Children learn early what a funeral smells like, what the house sounds like when a coffin is brought down the stairs, what mourning jewelry looks like, little lockets made of hair, brooches with initials engraved in black enamel, rings that carry the last fragments of someone who once sat at this table. You sleep in the same bed where someone died. You use the same utensils. You walk past the same mirror every morning and wonder who used to look into it before their time ran out. And when illness comes again, as it always does, you brace yourself. You take the syrup. You light the candle. You whisper your prayers, not because you believe it will save you, but because you hope someone, anyone, will still be listening. You would think in a house filled with people, there would be joy, the sound of children laughing, the warmth of family, the soft, quiet comforts of shared meals and long evenings. But in a Victorian household, family life isn't built for comfort. It's built for order. Let's start with the women. Whether upstairs or down, your life is not your own. You are expected to serve, quietly and correctly, from morning until night, and often through the night as well. If you're a lady of the house, you live in luxury, or at least that's what it looks like from the outside. You wear fine dresses, you have a lady's maid. You don't cook, you don't clean, you don't fetch your own tea or even button your own boots. But that doesn't mean freedom. You are, at all times, on display. A walking testament to your husband's wealth and your family's reputation. You must be graceful, modest, delicate, and available. Not emotionally, of course, just physically. For dinners, for appearances, for marriage, childbirth, and eventually dignified widowhood. You marry not for love, but for alliance, for position, for proximity to money or power. Your husband may be kind, or cruel, or absent. It doesn't matter. You belong to him the moment you say, "I do." He owns your property, your body, your children, even your name. You are expected to bear children, raise them, or rather supervise their raising, and maintain the household's moral tone. But you're not supposed to raise your voice, or read too much, or express strong opinions. Feelings are dangerous. They signal instability, hysteria, You'll be told to rest, to lie down, to take the tonic. Your role is to smile, to host, to guide the servants, to remain dignified, even when dignity feels like a weight pressing against your ribs. And if you're a servant, your life is harder, simpler, yes, but never simple. You rise before dawn. You serve without question. You are expected to be invisible and indispensable at the same time. Women downstairs clean, cook, haul, scrub, mend, polish, and bear the burden of everyone else's comfort. And what about family life for them? There is none. Not really. You might have a child, a son born on a spring morning, or a daughter with your grandmother's eyes. But you won't raise them here. Servants cannot keep children in service. If you're lucky, your child lives with relatives. If you're not, they go to a workhouse, or worse. You see them on your half-day off, if you're allowed one. You write letters on scraps of paper, save pennies for their shoes, and hope they remember your face. Motherhood, for women in service, is a quiet ache, a secret prayer, a sacrifice made every day in silence. And for children upstairs, their lives are strictly managed. The nursery is its own world, run by a nanny, governed by routines, insulated from reality. Children wake at 7, breakfast at 8, lessons with the governess by 9. French, Latin, handwriting, history, all memorized under the sharp eye of a woman who has no children of her own, but knows exactly how they should behave. Play is permitted, but not chaos. Boys climb trees, but only in the country. Girls play piano, but only the approved pieces. Emotions are discouraged. Tears are seen as weakness. Tantrums are dealt with by isolation, correction, and disapproval. You are not raised to express yourself. You are raised to perform. By 10, you know your social rank. By 12, you know your future depends entirely on marrying well or managing someone else's household. Your parents are figures of mystery. Father is distant. Mother is busy. You see them during tea, on special occasions, or when your behavior warrants comment. Love is formal, expressed in glances and gloved hands. No one hugs you. No one asks what you feel. Children downstairs live differently, if they live at all. Infant mortality is high. If you survive to 5, you work. Boys carry coal. Girls peel potatoes. You run errands, fetch water, clean boots. You do what you're told, without pause, without complaint. There is no education unless you're unusually lucky. No books, no toys, no nursery wallpaper. Just work and more work, and sometimes a crust of bread to call your own. And yet, children are everywhere. Their voices echo down staircases. Their laughter, rare but bright, slips through cracks in the social structure. They play marbles in the dirt, hide behind skirts, and find joy in the smallest moments. A sugared bun, a ribbon, a pet mouse hidden under the floorboards. Families, too, endure, even under pressure. Servants form bonds. The cook becomes a mother figure. The butler keeps secrets. The scullery maid and the footman share stolen glances by the larder. People carve families out of proximity, out of habit, out of survival. Even upstairs, there are moments of warmth. A child slipping into their mother's bed after a nightmare. A letter from a brother overseas. A father who reads Dickens aloud by candlelight because he misses the sound of young laughter in the house. But these are exceptions. Mostly, family life in a Victorian home is shaped by fear, duty, and restraint. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not cry unless you're alone. You do not disobey, because disobedience brings shame, and shame is a stain that never quite washes out. Girls are taught to be modest. Boys are taught to be serious. Everyone is taught to endure. And love? Love is not spoken. It is implied. Pressed into the crusts cut off a sandwich, sewn into the hem of a nightdress, carried in silence across years of expectation. In this house, emotions are folded away with last season's gloves, tucked into drawers, hidden behind formality and good manners and the sound of someone knocking, always knocking, at the drawing room door. Because in a Victorian household, even family is governed by rules, and the heart, like everything else, must be laced tight. The afternoon sun glances through the high windows, catching on the dust motes that swirl just out of reach of the feather duster. Outside, the street is calm, carriages rolling by at a polite distance, children in stiff collars walking home from school, heads bowed. It all looks so peaceful. But inside everything strains. Because by the afternoon, a Victorian household begins to crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly, silently. Like a teacup placed just a little too hard on its saucer. Tensions build. Upstairs, the drawing room is calm on the surface. The mistress sits in a high-backed chair, embroidery in her lap, but her stitches are uneven. Her sister has written, again, about the inheritance, about the will, about how some people never earned what they were given. She doesn't say names. She doesn't need to. The daughter sits nearby, pretending to read, but really, she's watching the clock. A man has been calling lately, a suitable match, everyone says. But he hasn't written in 3 days. Her stomach knots, but she says nothing. She would never be so vulgar as to ask. The son is nowhere to be found, probably at the club, gambling what little money isn't nailed down. No one speaks of it. No one dares. Downstairs, the cook is fuming. The scullery maid dropped a tureen. Porcelain. A gift from France. Irreplaceable as everything seems to be. She screamed at the girl, loud enough to rattle the saucepans, and now regrets it, but can't afford to take it back. The butler is red-faced. He intercepted a letter meant for the housemaid. Another from that young postman. That's the 3rd this month. The master must not know. Servants caught in romantic entanglements are dismissed without reference, and a maid without a reference is halfway to ruin. The tension isn't always spoken, but it moves like smoke through every room. Someone didn't polish the banister. Someone else left mud in the hallway. A hat was placed on the wrong hook. A tone was just a little too sharp. A silence just a little too long. The social order is upheld not by kindness, but by surveillance. Eyes are everywhere. The governess keeps to herself, not family, not servant. She walks alone in the garden after lessons, her hands clenched in her shawl. The children adore her, but she's not allowed to dine with them. She knows her place, precisely because she has none. Jealousies fester. The new parlor maid is too pretty. The kitchen boy is too lazy. The valet has ideas above his station. The under housemaid has a new brooch, too nice for her wages. Suspicion takes root quickly here. One whispered comment in the scullery can change someone's fate by tea time. And then there's discipline. It is everywhere. Not just rules, but consequences. A servant who speaks back is dismissed. A girl who's caught alone with a man, ruined. A boy who breaks a dish might lose his pay for a month. A child who misbehaves in front of guests is sent to bed without supper, or worse, locked in a darkened room to reflect. Punishment here is swift, quiet, brutal in its efficiency. You're not beaten, not often, not in the proper homes, but you are removed. You are erased from the order. A servant disappears. A governess returns to a distant cousin. A footman takes another post. No one asks questions. That would be rude. Sometimes the mistress cries in the morning room. Sometimes the cook slams a pot too hard and mutters a name under her breath. But nothing changes. Not really. Because power is the constant in this house. Social rank is ironclad. The master could ruin a maid's life with a glance. The housekeeper could ruin her with a word. And a poor girl's only protection is silence, and speed, and luck. Even the family is not safe from the rules they enforce. If the daughter refuses her suitor, her prospects shrink. If the son embarrasses the family, he's sent abroad. To travel, to learn, really, to disappear. Scandal is the thing everyone fears more than death. A whisper in the wrong ear can end an engagement, lose a fortune, start a lawsuit, or worse, invite gossip. Gossip in Victorian society is currency, power, poison, who visited whom, who wore what, who was seen too often in the park with too eager a smile. Servants hear everything. They whisper in corners, trade secrets like playing cards. They know who drinks too much, who argues behind closed doors, who locks themselves in the study at night and sobs into the velvet curtains. The walls may be thick, but the silence in this house is thin. Even objects tell stories. The broken fan found under the piano. The missing brooch, replaced but not forgotten. The bottle of laudanum that keeps moving to the back of the cabinet. Everyone here struggles, in their own quiet way. Women fight to be heard. Men fight to be obeyed. Servants fight to be overlooked, which is the safest thing to be. Children fight to grow up before they're swallowed whole by expectations. And sometimes, there are cracks. A raised voice behind a door, a slammed book. A maid found crying in the pantry. A mother who forgets her embroidery and stares into the fire too long. But by supper, the order returns. Hair is smoothed. Voices are lowered. Hands are folded. And everyone pretends again that everything is fine. Because the afternoon is a dangerous time. It is the hour when the day starts to sag, when tempers fray, when fatigue sharpens what can no longer be hidden. And in a Victorian household, nothing is more threatening than the truth. So everyone maintains the illusion, plays their part, smiles, curtsies, scrubs, and serves. Because no matter how many cracks form in the walls, the house must still look perfect, even if it's rotting from the inside out. Evening settles like dust on the windowsills. At first it comes gently, a soft dimming of the gas lights, a hush over the drawing room, a final yawn from a governess as she closes her book. But in a Victorian household, night is not gentle for long. It is a transition from order to uncertainty, from performance to paranoia. The family dines by candlelight. Silver glints on the table. The fire crackles in the hearth. Laughter floats between courses, thin and rehearsed, like lines from a play performed for the 100th time. But beneath the warmth of roasted lamb and lemon syllabub, there's a subtle tightening in the air, a shared knowledge that darkness changes everything, that the house, so orderly by day, begins to shift after sunset. The staff finish their last chores quickly, quietly. Coal is added to the bedroom fireplaces, candles placed on nightstands, bed linens turned down with practiced hands, hot water bottles slipped between sheets, boots cleaned and left by the door, gloves set out for morning. Then the bell stops ringing. The doors are locked. The house exhales, and it becomes something else. Servants retire to their quarters, though retire is generous. There's still mending to do, polishing, laundry to fold. The scullery maid scrubs dishes until her fingers are numb. The cook counts tomorrow's rations by candlelight. The butler checks the locks again. And if you're lucky, very lucky, you climb into a narrow bed in a cold attic room and close your eyes. But sleep does not come easily here. The house groans. Floorboards creak as if walked on by someone no longer living. Pipes knock in the walls. The wind whistles through gaps in the window frame. And then there are the rats. You hear them more than you see them. Tiny claws on wood, squeaking behind plaster, gnawing at invisible corners of the pantry, or the nursery, or the very edge of your nerves. Everyone pretends not to hear, because to speak of them would be to admit the house is vulnerable, fallible, imperfect. And in this world, that's almost as frightening as the rats themselves. If you're upstairs, your bed is larger, softer perhaps. You have a canopy, velvet drapes, maybe even a gas lamp you can turn down to a warm glow. But you're not safe either. The silence is oppressive, heavy. You lie awake listening to your own heartbeat, wondering if the cough you heard at dinner was just a cough, or the beginning of something else. Because illness moves quickly here, and death does not knock before entering. You stare at the ceiling and count your breaths. 1, 2, 3. In the nursery, the children sleep, small bundles under stiff woolen blankets. Their faces flushed from the heat of the fire or pale from its absence. Nannies sit dozing in chairs, needles paused in mid-air. If the child wakes crying, there is no warm embrace, just a hush, a cloth, a lullaby whispered through teeth clenched with fatigue. Because crying at night is dangerous. It draws attention. It draws questions. And there are too many stories of babies who never woke again. Down the hall, the master paces his study. The fire's gone out. He lights a cigar, stares out the window at nothing. He is not afraid of rats or creaking stairs, but of his own thoughts, his investments, his sons, his aging hands. He doesn't speak of fear. No man does. But he keeps the revolver in his desk loaded, just in case. In the servants' quarters, the rules bend, so just a little. A stolen moment of conversation, a game of cards, a sip of gin from a bottle hidden behind the spice rack. They laugh in whispers, clutching at moments of humanity in a world that gives them none. But laughter fades quickly when the lights go out. You feel exposed in the dark. No one trusts the night here. Fires are dangerous. Candles tip. Chimneys clog. A single spark can reduce a home to ash in minutes. So people sleep lightly, ears tuned to the faintest crackle, the tiniest whiff of smoke. Everyone knows someone who died in a fire. Everyone knows what it feels like to wake choking on soot. Even sleep, when it comes, is not restful. You dream in fragments, voices behind doors, hands reaching out of shadow, footsteps on the stairs that stop just before they reach your room. Some say the house remembers, that its walls absorb every argument, every secret, every scream muffled by decorum. You don't believe in ghosts. Not really. But when the candle gutters out, and the last ember fades, and you're left with only your own breath in your ears, you wonder. You wonder about the girl who fell from the top landing, about the old man who died in the study, sitting upright for 3 days before anyone noticed, about the empty nursery at the end of the hall. No one uses that room anymore. But sometimes the rocking horse moves. You tell yourself it's the wind, or rats, or your imagination. But still, you pull the blanket higher. You face the wall. You pray to sleep without dreams. Because dreams in this house are often worse than waking, and sometimes they whisper your name. The night stretches on. Hours pass. Clocks tick. Time slows to a crawl, and the house once so full of life feels like a mausoleum. All the velvet, all the silver, all the polished wood, and still the shadow of death is never far. Because in the end, no matter how grand the bed, or warm the hearth, or full the pantry, this house has seen too many people come and go, too many names whispered, too many goodbyes unspoken, and too many nights like this one, heavy, haunted, and waiting for morning. And now, as the last coals die in the hearth, as the final candle flickers out, and the great house sinks into silence once more, we find ourselves standing at the edge of that long, dark Victorian night. You've walked the floors. You've felt the ache in your legs, the cold in your bones, the scratch of wool, and the pressure of expectation wrapped around your ribs like a corset that never loosens. You've lit the fires. You've served the soup. You've bowed when you were told, smiled when you didn't feel like it, lowered your eyes when you wanted to scream. You've seen the upstairs, the fine curtains, the chandeliers, the family portraits painted to outlive the people they resemble. And you've seen downstairs the cracked basins, the blackened pots, the weary glances traded between servants who have worked together for years and yet still speak in whispers. You've eaten the bread, dry and hard as expectation. You've drunk the weak tea, brewed from leaves that gave up long ago. You've sewn the hems, emptied the chamber pots. Woken in a bed you did not choose, to live a day you did not shape. And now, after all of it, you're tired. Deeply, truly tired. But not just from the labor, from the watching. The being watched. The ever-present weight of rules and rank and reputation pressing down like the lid of an iron pot that never quite comes off. You've seen what it is to survive in a world that doesn't ask how you feel, only how well you perform. Where grief must be measured, where desire must be folded away like last winter's gloves, where joy, when it comes, arrives quiet and short-lived, like sunlight through a shuttered window. And yet, people lived this way, not for a day, not for a week, but for decades. Generations raised in houses like this one, under roofs that leaked, behind walls that whispered, in rooms where laughter was rationed and comfort was earned with quiet endurance. Women who gave birth by candlelight, afraid to scream too loudly in case the master overheard. Men who buttoned up their coats and their emotions with the same stiff precision. Children who sat up straight, eyes forward, never speaking unless asked. Servants who moved through the house like shadows, remembered only when they made a mistake. And through it all, life persisted. Bread rose in the kitchen. Ink dried on letters never sent. Fires burned. Hearts fluttered, then failed. And every night, the house held its breath and waited for morning. But you don't have to live there. Not really. You don't have to lace your body into stiff corsets or boil your linens or polish boots with hands raw from cold water and lie. You don't have to sleep with the sound of rats behind the wall and the weight of silence between you and every other person in the house. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to perform. Not tonight. Because you're here, in the now, in a bed that's yours, with sheets that are clean, with walls that are warm, with air that's still and safe. No one will ring a bell for you before sunrise. No one will judge you for resting. You don't have to listen for footsteps on the stairs. You don't have to keep one ear open for crying children, or a master's temper, or a whisper in the hallway that sounds just a little too much like your name. The rules are gone. The house is behind you. The night is still, and you are free. So let yourself soften. Let the stiffness fall away. Let your breath slow, your shoulders drop, your thoughts float like ash from a fire that's finally burned down to peace. You made it through the day, and you never have to wake up in a Victorian household again. No stiff collars, no boiled cabbage, no endless social games or fear of scandal, no corsets, no coal buckets, no cold basins waiting in the dark. Just sleep, just warmth. Just the soft, steady knowledge that you live in a time where rest is allowed, where comfort is real, where the night doesn't bring fear, only dreams. And maybe tonight, those dreams will be quiet ones. A warm kitchen, a single candle, a loaf of bread that's just come out of the oven. You sit alone, and no one calls your name. No one watches. No one expects anything at all. You are just there, alive, still, safe. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in a Victorian household. Sleep well.